everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm reviewing the new Sunrise palette from Natasha Denona. So this palette is absolutely beautiful. Mine's a little messy now because I've had my fingers all up in it, swatching it and playing with it. This is definitely a very unique color story and I think it's beautiful and I'm so excited to play around with it. Now in this video, I am going to leave some timestamps in the description box down below because I do two tutorials in here. I'm going to give you the breakdown on the size and the price comparison and all of that compared to her palettes and one of the other palettes that I have that's similar in size and price in my collection. But then I also do two different tutorials showing you guys, two different looks that I created with it. I also do some swatches and some palette comparisons to some of the other Natasha Denona palettes that I have in my collection and a palette from Urban Decay who I feel like might be a really good alternative for those of you maybe have that palette in your collection. Hold tight because we're going to get into all of that later on in the video, but I'm going to leave timestamps. So in case you're not really interested in the breakdown of the price and the size and all of that, you can jump ahead to the tutorials or you can just jump right straight ahead and check out the swatches to see if this palette is right for your collection. So this palette was made in Italy. It is a 15 shadow pan palette. Retails for $65. It has 3 duochromes, 5 metallics, and 7 matte shades. As you guys know, this one is a little bit different and a little bit cheaper than some of her other palettes that she has in her collection. So as you'll know, she normally has the bigger pan size palettes. So this one is just a little bit over half the size of her original $129 palettes. So this palette is 0.67 ounces, which is 19.25 grams. So that makes each shadow 1.28 grams. You are paying $3.38 per gram. Her larger palettes also have 15 shadows. They are also made in Italy. They're $129. Her larger size palettes are 37.5 grams. So this one is 19.25. The bigger palettes are 2.5 grams per shadow. And this palette is 1.28 grams. So it's just a little bit over half the size, okay? Just a hair over half the size. So the bigger palettes are $3.44 per gram. Remember, this palette is $3.38. So this one is actually a little bit cheaper. So you're getting a little bit more and you're paying a little bit less, if that makes sense. Now, to compare this size of this particular palette to another palette that I have that's exactly the same price is the new Nudes palette. So this is from Huda Beauty. So the new Nudes palette is just about the same size as this one from Natasha Denona. Now, the new Nudes palette retails for $65. It has 18 shades. This one has 15. This one has 18. This one is a total of 19.7 grams. So this one was 19.25. So this one's a little bit less than this one as far as grams go. This palette is $3.30 per gram. So this one is 8 cents more per gram than this one. So they're very comparable, you guys, in size and all of that. The only difference is, this one has 18 shadows, this one has 15. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a price breakdown so you could kind of understand the size. The thing that I was worried about when I seen this, sometimes when you have, things like that and they make a smaller size of something, like mini sizes, okay? You guys know, when you go to Sephora and you go into the mini size section, you know that you're automatically gonna be paying more money because it's a mini size, right? Well, I was kind of feeling the same way about this one. I was like, okay, so this one's $65, which is a great price for a Natasha Denona palette with 15 shadows, but how much is it per gram? And honestly, I was really impressed that actually this one is a little bit less money, and so I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the fact that the packaging is absolutely beautiful. It's just like all the other palettes. It's just like the Safari palette and the All Neutrals palette. You have the little things back here where you can pop out the shadows and, take them with you in like traveling wise and stuff. So she did not skimp on the packaging on this. She kind of shrunk everything down to make it a little bit less of a bang on the bank account. So that's the price breakdown on the palette. We're gonna jump right into the 2 tutorials that I created with this palette, and then I'm gonna get into all of the details on swatching them and going through some of the other palettes that I have in my collection and giving you guys my full final thoughts at the end of the video. So I hope you guys are excited about the video, and without further ado, let's jump right into the tutorials. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into look number 1, but here is the palette, and she's pretty. She's a nice, beautiful palette. I'm gonna take a bigger brush. This is my Blender Pro. I'm gonna go into the shade Morgan, and I'm gonna put that shade right here in the crease and kind of just lay it down as like a transition shade. Okay, I'm gonna go back into it one more time and see how much we can build that shade. Tried to concentrate most of that product right here on this outer corner. Next up, I'm gonna move to this brush, which is just a smaller brush. This is the Crease Pro from Sonia G. I'm gonna go back into Morgan and just kind of place that here on this outer corner. This is a nice, like, really pretty peachy shade. I mean, did you guys think that I wouldn't create a really pretty peachy look with this palette? I mean, oh, you guys know I love everything peach. I'm gonna put some here on the inner corner. That shade is very pigmented, and it's much more pigmented than it looks. What's nice about that shade is it kind of does build dimension within the shadow. And I'm gonna go into the shade Jasper. I'm gonna go right here on this outer corner with Jasper and just kind of bringing it into the inner corner. I'm just adding dimension within the crease. For the lid, I'm gonna take this brush. This is the Worker Pro. I'm gonna go into the shade Azalea. Why is that not swatching very good? I'm gonna go into the shade Azalea because it's not swatching very good, but that doesn't really mean a lot. You know, just because it doesn't swatch good doesn't mean it's not gonna apply good. Really feeling that shade. It's not that it's not pretty, but it just kind of is more sheer, and I was hoping for a little bit more opacity, but it's a little bit more sheer than I was hoping. I'm gonna go into the shade Laurel, and I'm gonna pop that over top. And I'm gonna bring that all over my lid. Now I'm gonna take my Builder Pro and I'm gonna go into the shade Jasper. And I'm gonna put Jasper right here on this outer corner. I think this is really pretty and really summery. So I'm just kind of packing that on. And then I'm gonna take the tip of that brush and I'm gonna kind of carve out a little bit of dimension right here in this crease. I got some fallout. I'll have to clean that up. So just know that you will get some fallout. I'm gonna go into the shade Agate. I'm gonna put that on the inner corner. And then up here on the brow bone. Okay, so this is the final look, and as far as the lippy goes, I put on my KKW Beauty Nude 1.5 lip liner, and I threw on this. So I actually bought this when I bought the palette. These are pretty new. So these are called Mark Your Liquid Lips. They are metallic. I bought the shade Nude Metallic. That's what I'm wearing right now, and it's really, really, really pretty. It kind of reminds me of the two Jouer, these are the high pigment pearl lip glosses. I have it in Seychelles and Maui. So this one is Maui and this one is Seychelles. This is the one from Natasha Denona. So the only difference between these, like they have the same kind of metallic finish, but this one dries, somewhat of like a mattifying effect. It dries down, but these kind of stay glossy. So I guess it's just preference, but This is pretty comfortable to wear. I would assume this is a pretty long lasting liquid lip, but I thought it went really pretty with the eyeshadow look. And I think it does. I think it's really, really pretty. So that's it for look number 1. Let's jump right into look number 2. Okay, so let's start on look number 2. I don't want to use these purple shades over here. I really want this all over my lid. I'm always a sucker for a periwinkle, and I'll be honest with you, that periwinkle shade pretty much made up my decision when I was going to buy this palette, because I love periwinkles. I'm going to take the Blender Pro. I'm going to go into the shade Morning, which is kind of like that light yellow shade. And I'm just going to kind of use this in the crease as kind of like a nice transition. Now, as you guys have probably noticed, I don't have any concealer on because I'm working with the purples. I didn't really want to go ahead and go in with a bunch of concealer and then have to just fix it anyway. So I did the rest of my makeup, but I just kind of left the concealer out of the equation for a minute. I'm going to go into the shade Clove. It's very dark, so that's the reason why I went ahead and put Morning down first, because I wanted something that I could blend it into, because I didn't want this to just be an explosion of purple that I would struggle blending out. So you just never know when you're working with a new palette. So I felt like, you know, placing down that lighter shade underneath it would help it to blend it out. So I'm going to switch to the smaller brush and just kind of buff out these edges. But that shade is nice. Like, you see how easy that was to blend? I'm going to go into Morning, and I'm going to pop this right here in the outer corner. And then I'm going to go into Clove. Look how pretty that is. Like, even those two colors together, so pretty. I'm going to go into the shade Glory. And I want to pop a little bit of that in the crease just to kind of bring out a little bit of that vibrant purple. I'm bringing a little bit of that Morning around the edges just to kind of bring that shade back underneath and kind of bring it back to life. Okay, so I'm going to take my Worker Pro and I'm going to go into the shade Aster. Gosh, that shade's pretty. And I'm going to spray it. I'm just going to go in with my finger. I'm just going to really dig in there and pick up a ton of it and then spray it. Okay, that's the key. There we go. That is beautiful. I'm going to take my finger and go into Awakening, and I'm going to pop that like right here in the middle just to give a little bit of dimension. I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference, but I mean, why not play around? Okay, so I got my concealer on. Let's move on to the lower lash line. I'm going to go into Morning. Apply this underneath. Okay, now I'm going to go into Clove. And I'm keeping it just real close to the lash line. I'm going to go into Agate, I think is what, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I'm going to put that right here on the brow bone. And the reason why I'm using that shade is because it does kind of have that yellow undertone to it. I don't want to bring it down too far, but whatever is left on the brush, I'm just kind of brushing it down into this part. Okay, I'm going to take that same shade and I'm going to pop that on the inner corner. This is the final look. I went ahead and threw on this lip gloss from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is in the shade San Tropez. This is one of my favorite glosses with that purple undertone, and I never hesitate to wear it when I am wearing a look like this. And all I did was take a little bit of Aster right here and just kind of popped it on the lip just to kind of bring what was on my lid down onto the lips. So this is the final look. I love me some purple. You guys know I love me a periwinkle shade. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches, and then I'm going to compare them to some of the other Natasha Denona palettes that I have. Also, another palette that I feel like is a little bit similar from Urban Decay. Okay, so this first shade right up here is Poppy. That one is a metallic shade. This is called Citrine, and that is a matte shade. This is Phlox, and that is a metallic shade. Awakening, which is a duochrome shade. And then this one is Laurel, and Laurel is a metallic shade. Then we have Aster, which is a duochrome. Glory, which is a matte. Azalea, which is a duochrome. Morgan, which is a matte. Agate, which is a metallic. Clove, which is a matte. Carnelian, which is a matte. Then we have Jasper, which is also a matte. And then I ran out of room, so the other two are right here. So this one is called Morning, which is a matte, and then we have Dayspring, which is a metallic shade. So I have a few Natasha Denona palettes here. I have this one, which is the Holiday Aries palette. So that's what this palette looks like, and I love this blue shade. It's one of the prettiest blue shades I have in my collection. I'm absolutely in love with that beautiful blue shade. So then I have Joya, which this is what Joya looks like, and I kind of felt like, you know, this palette kind of had somewhat similar. Natasha Denona has said that these are all brand new shades. I'm not looking for them to be exactly the same. I'm just looking for similar shades, just in case you were interested in getting this and maybe you have a lot of Natasha Denona in your collection. So I'm gonna go into this shade right here. It's the fourth shade over in the Joya palette. I'm gonna compare that to this one, which is Poppy, and Phlox, which is the third one over. So this is the shade from the Joya palette, and you know, there's some similarities there, you guys. I don't know, I mean, I would say closer to this one, which is Phlox, but Phlox has a little bit more of a reddish undertone, and the one from the Joya palette is more of a, like a burgundy, and this one is a little bit more on the pinky side. So not the same color, but definitely similar. While I have that shade swatched, I'm gonna go into this shade in the Aries palette. So again, similarities, but not the same. Definitely not the same. Okay, next up, I'm gonna go into this shade right here in the Joya palette. So this one is a CP, which is described as it is developed for holiday as a richly pigmented wet powder formula that is easy to blend. So none of the new palettes have this shadow formula, but we're kind of just doing the shade. So that's what that shade looks like in that palette. Let's go into Laurel, which is this shade right here on the end, on the top row. And let's go into Awakening. Awakening has that purplish undertone. And we're gonna go into Dayspring. Dayspring might be somewhat similar. Let me do Dayspring like right here and see. Yeah, Dayspring is very similar. So this one is the Joya palette and this one is Dayspring. There's some similarities there, just so that you guys can see that. But I'm gonna go into this shade in the Joya palette. It's like a satin matte, and it stains, first of all. I don't like how it stains. And second, I really struggle building up and like, you know, packing that pigment on, which it's not my favorite formula. And I'm so glad that formula is not in this palette. But I'm gonna compare it to Glory and maybe Clove. So this one is from this palette, the mini palette, and then these two are from this new palette. And I mean, there's some similarities there between these two shades, but this one from the Sunrise palette, this is Glory. Glory is definitely darker. I am gonna go into this shade right here. This one was one of my favorite palettes. Like this I think was my first Natasha Denona palette that I ever bought. Still love it to this day. I'm gonna go into Jasper, this one right here. Kind of has that orange base to it. And we're gonna put Jasper, oh man. This palette has a lot of similarities between these two palettes. I mean, that is almost an identical shade, but the one from this palette, this shade right here, is just a tad bit darker. I'm gonna go into this last shade right here in the Aries next to Dayspring maybe. Let me put Dayspring right next to this. So that's what Dayspring looks like next to that one, and yeah, there's no similarities. Let me put Azalea. Yeah, no. So no similarities within that shade, but the mattes, definitely. I think we've established that if you have these two palettes, you may not need the new one. You may not. There's a lot of similar shades, all except for like the purple and, you know, several of the mattes, but there's a lot of similar shades in those palettes. But the other palette that I found that I kind of felt was similar was this palette. This is the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. This palette retails for $49. Actually, it's on sale for $29 on the Sephora website. I think this palette has really good pigmentation. The mattes are extremely pigmented, easy to blend. It has great reviews, you guys. Out of 677 reviews on the Sephora website, it has a 4.5 out of 5 star. So it is a good palette. And I kind of feel like there were some similarities between both of these palettes, just in kind of the color story overall. So I kind of wanted to play around with these and kind of do some swatches and see if there are some similarities within the shades. I don't feel like there's anything in the Born to Run palette that is going to give you the same type of effect as a duochrome from the Sunrise palette. However, you know, I'm just kind of showing you guys different shades. So I'm going to go into Ignite from the Born to Run, and I'm going to put Dayspring right below it. This is Urban Decay and this is Natasha Denona. So those shades are very similar. I mean, very similar. Very similar. I'm going to go into Azalea, which is this middle shade right here. This one is not my favorite shade. I don't like the way it swatches and I don't like the way it applies. That's just my personal opinion. It's probably my least favorite shade in the palette. I just don't really like the way that duochrome applies. It's just a little bit harder to work with. Let's go into Accelerate, which is this one right here, and I might go into Double Life right there. Okay, so this one is the Natasha Denona. This one is the Accelerate from Born to Run. Let's go into Double Life. None of those are the same. I don't really see a shadow that will match that one from Natasha Denona, so let's move on. Kind of want to do this peach shade. So this is Still Shot right here. And it's a beautiful peachy brown shade. I'm going to compare that to the shade Morgan. Oh yeah, those are similar as well. Morgan is definitely more peachier. This one is the Still Shot and this is Morgan from the Natasha Denona. So there's some similarities there. I'm gonna compare the shade Clove from the Natasha Denona palette to Hellride, which is this one right here in the Born to Run palette. These mattes from the Urban Decay palette are nowhere near as creamy as the Natasha Denona when I am swatching them. Like, oh, the Natasha Denona ones just, man, they just melt right into your arm. They're just unbelievably pigmented. Okay, so there's also some similarities there. So this is Wild Heart from the Born to Run palette, and this is Clove from the Natasha Denona. So there's also some similarities within that shade. Baja, which is this shade right here. And I'm gonna go into Jasper, this one right here. Also, those are very similar. So this one is the Baja from the Born to Run, and this is Jasper. So also some similarities, you guys. I want to go into Stranded, which is this one right up here. I'm going to compare that to Agate, this one right here. Oh, wow. Okay, so you guys, this is definitely a very similar palette. So this one is Stranded from the Urban Decay Born to Run palette, and this one is Agate from the Natasha Denona palette. So you guys, there is a lot of similarities between those four shades. That's not including Ignite and Dayspring. So Ignite, I'm going to put those somewhere on my arm. So Ignite is from the Born to Run palette. And then Dayspring is from the Natasha Denona palette. So there's also some similarities between those two shades. So, I mean, you guys, there's a lot of similarities between this palette. A lot. Okay, so here's my thing. If you have these two palettes from Natasha Denona, okay, and you have the Born to Run palette, I think you have this palette. I really do. Because these two kind of give you the duochrome effect that the palette offers, but then this one gives you all the other shades, the mattes and the metallics. So here's my final thoughts. I think this palette is absolutely beautiful. It's extremely pigmented, blendable. Like I said, my only shade that I didn't really love in the palette that I used, you know, I didn't use every shade, but the shade that I don't like out of all of the shades is this one. It's not that I don't like it, it's just a little bit harder to work with. A little bit more on the sheer side as far as duochromes go, and I kind of was hoping for it to be a little bit more opaque than it is. I think it's beautiful. If that's the color story that you love and it speaks to you, you're not gonna be disappointed if you buy the palette. I think you're gonna really enjoy the pigmentation, the quality of the shadows, and the size of the shadows. It makes it a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier on the bank account to buy a palette like this, and I won't be sending this one back. So even though I do have these two in my collection, and I have the Born to Run, it's a little bit easier for me to justify the cost of this one than it is the bigger palettes. Well, I like the color story of it. Is it something I'm going to pick up all the time? Maybe, because I love this section for the summer. Like, I love this section over here. These are a little bit deeper. I love the look that I created today. I love that periwinkle shade. So this palette, in my opinion, is just a little bit more on the unique side. So it kind of makes me want to reach for it a little bit more. You're going to have to look at your collection and see if it's justifiable for you to pay the $65 for this palette. But I do really appreciate the fact that she's making palettes this size. I like it. I think it's a beautiful palette. So that's it for my review of this palette. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you guys again for all the love that you guys show me and this channel. It means the world to me, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day filled with love and happiness. I will see you guys right back here tomorrow for Foundation Friday, and I love you all so much. Bye!